Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Nelson and I'm doing a book review for The History of Jihad from Muhammad to ISIS, written by Robert Spencer. Now, Robert, uh, Robert's main thesis for the book, he says that mainstream Islam has never taught peace or equality between members and non-members. So he takes a really hardline view towards Islam and tries to kind of prove that jihad has always been around and been a part of Islam, and that Islam has pretty much always been bad. He argues that Islam has only taught jihad, and that jihad only means war. Um, to show the evidence for this, he explores Muslim conquests and terrorist attacks from Muhammad to ISIS, just as the title says. So he goes from the ancient times all the way through the Middle Ages and explores all of that history. And he primarily uses quotes from contemporaries as evidence. So contemporary Islamic scholars and historians and their justifications for the use of violence against other peoples. Now, unfortunately, I wouldn't actually recommend this book. I didn't love it. And it's not that I didn't really have a good time reading it, although I do think it was a dry read, but I don't think he has good enough evidence to support his claims, Mr. Spencer. So he does not disprove anecdotes that the evidence that he uses may be anecdotal, and he also doesn't dismiss alternative explanations for all of the wars that Islam fought um, during the Middle Ages and ancient times and whatnot. So anecdotal evidence. The quotes of contemporaries that he uses that I mentioned before could very well be anecdotal evidence. That could very easily just be one guy that says that jihad is important and that infidels need to be destroyed and conquered. And so he doesn't disprove that it's anecdotal. He doesn't use enough evidence to say that the thoughts at the time were mainstream. So the quoted persons that he uses could very well have been alone in their thoughts and their philosophies. And another thing is that he doesn't prove that the quotes that he uses weren't just propaganda to incite people to go to war, which could very easily be a thing. I think, if you're trying to get a whole country to go to war, you could very easily use religious justification for it. Now, that brings me to the next thing, which is kind of the refutations that you could use. He argues that jihad is the primary motivator for all of Islam's conquests in the Middle Ages, and really, throughout all of its history. The problem is that he ignores and really doesn't address all the different explanations that you could use for violence, and why countries go to war, whether it's territorial gain, revenge, nationalism, economic gain. He doesn't address that kind of stuff, and really doesn't disprove it. In fact, there's one point near relatively early in the book where he says that one of the reasons why Muslims invaded Spain was specifically because one of the kings in North Africa was upset with one of the kings in Spain. Not really because it was jihad. I mean, maybe he told his soldiers that it was for jihad, but it was really just because he was angry. Now, I mentioned before that it is a bit of a dry read. It's kind of a superficial history book, and because it's a history book, that makes it kind of boring. He doesn't explain, but it's not a very good history book either, because he doesn't explain why events happen other than just the explanation of jihad. So it kind of reads like a Wikipedia article and doesn't really explain the significance of places and people, which forces the reader to look that stuff up all by themselves, which is what I had to do a lot. It's not character driven like a lot of books are either, so don't be looking forward to that if you pick up the book. Now, it does have good strengths. It still has a lot of great quotes, and I learned a lot of general knowledge from about Islam in the Middle Ages, stuff, it's history that I had never learned about, so I thought that was really great. So in conclusion, I still wouldn't recommend the book. Do I regret reading the book? No, I definitely don't. I think I learned a lot, but I think it's a great example of where, you read something once and you don't need to read it again. And so now I'm telling you guys that I don't think you have to read it either. Thanks.